Hey. Everybody calm down. We're about to get the show started. No need to get out of hand. Coming to you right now, experience, strength, and hope from Tony the Mayor. All right, we're back again. This is Tony the Mayor T, to bring you more of experience, strength, and hope. A podcast that will uplift you, strengthen you, encourage you, and give you visions for tomorrow. And we want to work on those goals, those little bitty goals first. You know, sometimes we try to stretch it way out, but let's work on some of those short-term goals, those small things that we need to do and get taken care of so we can accomplish the big thing. This is experience, strength, and hope. And today I hope that you enjoy every word that you hear, everything that you hear. I hope it inspires you and encourages you. I want to thank you again for listening to me on Spotify, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Continue to listen to those and support me by liking it, subscribing it, following it, thumbs up or thumb down. Just let me know that you're there. Those things help us to stay on top. Again, I'm Tony the Mayor, and enjoy our show. Okay, on today's show, we have Mike Turner, my buddy Mike Turner from Junction City, Kansas. Been a lot of places and met a lot of famous people. And today he's going to talk about the march that he had in Junction City, March or Die, after the death of George Floyd, which he organized. This is only part one, so make sure you tune in to part two next week. Thank you and have a good day. This is Tony the Mayor. I'm Antonio, Tony the Mayor. And today I'm talking with Mike Bernard Turner, Mike Turner, Junction City Zone, and we're just going to chop it up a little bit and talk. But that's one thing that you mentioned, just a few minutes ago, about Junction City and the opportunity thing. I think it could be a lot of opportunity. I look at Junction City as a transition place for a lot of people. They can come here, they may not stay here, but it's a lot that you can get and leave here, and take it with you. I was born in Chicago till I was 18 years old, came in the military. I've been in Junction City since. I've been overseas, I've been, different places and stuff, but this was my home. And a lot of people talk about JC, how bad, it's terrible. But man, I grew up in Chicago. It was like, man, you can leave your door open sometimes. You can sit there, bars on your window. Ooh. So it was a good place for me to bring up I had 4 girls, right. And stuff. So, I know you've been here and you left and you transitioned back and stuff. So I'm just gonna let you tell your story a little bit first. And
so we're live, right?
We live now.
Man, this is a great opportunity.
Yeah.
I left and I left with $65 and jumped on a Greyhound.
And this was in, what year was this
1988.
Okay.
And
after the Disco West and after the 10th Street days.
They might have still been popping.
Yeah, they might have been.
I wasn't never old enough to go in there.
I wasn't old enough, but
I may go in the daytime because it was my cousin's club.
Yeah, Frank, I got a story to tell you about Frank.
Man, let me tell you. I don't think I was in Miami 6 months. I enrolled in a music school. And they found me housing in the school.
Okay.
When I got there. Because I got there and only had $13 in my pocket. And the cab driver was like, I need $13. I'm like, this is my last $13. So what we going to do? We're going to have to scrap for this $13. But anyway, God made a way out of no way. Because when I got out of the taxi, there was a guy who came downstairs to the car.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Are you looking for the school?" And I said, he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Mike Turner." He said, "We've been waiting on you. We got housing set up for you." So I gave the cab driver $13. Long story short, once I got into the school, I met a guy named Richard Cuff, and he's a big voice out of Jacksonville now. He told me, "You don't want to be in the streets on South Beach. Where you from?" I said, "Fort Riley, Kansas." He said, "What?" He said, "I was in the Army there, stationed in the 70s, and I used to party at the Disco West."
Oh, okay.
So there it was.
Yeah.
I said, "That's my cousin club." And he said, "Oh man, let me put you on." So a year later, I came back from New York. I left Miami Beach, went to New York, came back, and lo and behold, he introduced me to gospel radio.
Okay.
And it was the same station that Larry King, Janet Reno were still there and still working, and got a chance to work with them. It was a Jewish-owned station by the family name of Margolis. And the mother of that family was the senator of Florida at that time.
Okay.
And they gave me an opportunity on that station through Richard Cuff.
Okay.
Yeah, he said his mother was passing away, so he wanted to pass an opportunity off to me. He went to work for Taco Bell, and I got my first radio show.
Wow.
And it was because of him knowing my uncle. Something. So my grandmother always said, follow the word, the way of God. Go to the church and let that be your pathway. I didn't have to go to the church. The church came to me.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, through the radio station. through Richard.
Through Richard Cuff.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was a Christian, but at the same time he was going to music school. So he was kind of outside of the realm, but on his daily job was a Christian radio station called WMBM, which was the first gospel radio station on South Beach. So
what? I mean, you were in. What made you or leave Junction City? Was it the?
It was the death of. Well, first of all, before my brother died, it was still a lot of inequality. And there's some stories I can't tell because I'm still alive.
Right.
And we face that inequality passively and some with violence.
Okay.
And it was because the violence came to us, so it was a self-defense mechanism. And the inequality were things that came before my time. See, in Junction City, as we see Fifth Street Park and the swimming pool, and we're all swimming together, there was a time that black people couldn't swim in the swimming pool. They had to go to Smoky Hill River or Republican River.
Okay.
Black people had to swim in the river. They couldn't even go to the lake.
Man.
Yeah. So these stories that are untold, and the opportunities the kids have just to walk down the street. Because when the street lights came on is when we had to be home. And you probably grew up on that too.
Right. I
know there's a lot of boundaries in Chicago.
Yeah. Well, people talk about Chicago being, big city, a lot of racism there, but I always let them know. And I learned this when I was young, and not just through high school and living it, that Chicago is one of the most segregated cities. You can look that up on, even in Wikipedia it tells you that, how segregated Chicago is. You have Italians, the Mexicans, you have, you have the, a lot of areas where Jews are, blacks are, Chinatown, China. These areas don't. Oh, you got a nice Chinatown, good food too. And but when I grew up, you didn't go in certain areas. I tell this story today about when I was young. I was throwing snowballs at a car. We was out throwing snowballs. They had the old unmarked cars, and we threw a snowball. As this car came back around, looked around, it was an unmarked police car. They picked us up, put us in the police car. I was young. I wasn't even in the 5th grade then, because I know I had moved out of the neighborhood in the 5th grade. Took us in an area called Bridgeport in Chicago, which is an all-white area. That's even where the mayor was from at that time. And dropped us off. Long ways from my house, you know what I'm saying? And see what it is, what they would do things like that, because they think you wouldn't even make it back. You're gonna get beat up or something gonna happen. That was our punishment, to drop us off somewhere that's not in our neighborhood. But
that's cold.
I experienced some things, when I came to Junction City. It wasn't Junction City, but it was the military that let me know that how it is to be around other races. Really, my high school was all black.
Yes, sir.
Elementary school
And I
all
was
black.
told that Junction City in the 60s and 70s was the only military base where you could interracially date or marry.
Oh, is that right?
In the whole country. I was told this by some veterans actually about a month ago. And they were pretty adamant about it. They was like, this is the only base in the 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s, and 70s that you can integrate.
Now,
you can date outside your marriage.
I went to see Kevin Wilmot, and I had seen him a couple of times. That was probably my third time hearing him speak. And, he went 9th Street and did the movie with Spike Lee. And he talked about Black Klansman. He talked about how this high school was. I didn't know Junction City had a race riot in the high school before. He talked about that. He talked about how segregated it was, like over there where the Buffalo Soldiers used to live over there on 18th Street, where the little theater was, and all that. It's a church now, but back then,
church.
Yeah, vertical church now.
Do you know that same building was the building that Abraham Lincoln was headquarters at to look at Buffalo Soldier Park?
Is that right?
That's the very building.
Is that right?
I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh, that's all right, man. I'm here to hear you, brother.
No. I want to first thank you just for being here. This is a tremendous opportunity. And, if you have faith of a mustard seed is what the Bible says.
Yeah.
So hopefully this is the start of something big.
Yeah, I want it to be. There's a lot of things that happened when you did, and we'll move forward just a little bit, just so I can talk about it. I seen when George Floyd was murdered, and a lot of people were asking about. I watched. Well, let me back up. I watched on TV different cities protesting against the police. Yeah, but I watched everybody do their thing, and a lot of it was done out of violence, or looting and stealing, using the occasion for a different reason,
Yes, sir.
When I heard that you were going to do something with the police here, downtown in the park, I said, man, I got to get down there. I have to be there.
You seem to always show up.
I know. I got my camera.
Best photographs. And you need to charge for them, big brother, because I had to.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for real, your photographs, they don't only capture the moment, but that's a moment in time that we can't rewind.
Yeah. Okay.
It's important that people know that, God gives us different gifts.
Yeah.
And we don't know why sometimes, but the police called me when I was working as the head of custodial at the high school.
Okay.
Yeah, a little /security, because they're always short.
Right.
So he called me at the high school and he said, can you come to the police station? I called my aunt, called my mother. I said, what do you think? They said, take somebody with you based on the history of Junction City.
Right.
We had a new police chief, John Lamb. He said, I just want to speak to you about the protest, because I initially called the protest March or Die. Because obviously we got to be able to live in our own neighborhoods, because it seems like they're just coming in and just chopping the young people down. And that's not fair. So I said, okay, I'll come in. I didn't know he wanted to discuss the title of the protest, which was March or Die.
Okay.
So when I got to the police station, they had Trish Giordano, which is now the standing commissioner. And they had the brother who's been on the police force for a while. Nichols. Captain Nichols was there. I don't know why I forgot his name.
Yeah, Big Nick.
Yeah, he was there, and he led off into the conversation when I met with the police chief. He said, Mike, before you left, you was a handful. Right. I said, well, that was because that's how I had to deal with the situation at that time.
Okay.
Back then, we weren't protesting. We were fighting back.
Okay.
In Junction City.
Okay.
And there were a couple of situations in the past I'll tap on if we get to that point a little later. But I continued the conversation with the Captain Nichols, Trish Giordano, which was a captain at the time, and John Lamb. I thanked John because he was new to the city, but I reminded him, I said, look at Tim Brown. He just got caught dealing illegal guns, and his own people, we're not going to mention who in his family, but they turned him in. And that particular sheriff was here for all the dirt that went back as far as almost.
But that Tim Brown, with the sheriff, what was his name?
I think it was Tim Brown.
Oh, okay.
Tim Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sheriff, chief of police. I mean,
Yeah,
it's all creamy at the top. And I asked Brother Nichols, I said, how come you haven't run for police chief? Why do they got to get somebody outside of Junction City? They tend to overlook black people.
Okay.
When we're suited and booted for the job.
Right.
And he said, that's based on another conversation, Michael. What we want to talk about is why you called protest march or die. I said, because when I step out my house after seeing what happened to George Floyd, and I don't see no police chiefs in the country speaking up.
Right.
I don't see any law enforcement speaking up other than social media here and there.
Right.
You'll get a cop speaking up. I said, but you as a police chief could really rock the nation. You could move the nation if they see you out there speaking with us. Not only did John Lamb come out and march with us, but at that time COVID kicked in, so they allowed, they brought us face masks and ice water.
I remember I got some face masks.
Yeah,
they sure did.
They provided that. So that's new to Junction City, that the police are going to cooperate with something when we were under a curfew.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was something. And the magnitude, I mean, the amount of people, and black, white, Hispanic, Asian, everyone was down there, and it wasn't like it was any type of hatred coming out, but it was like it was unity, unity for the first time of seeing a lot of this going on in the world that was going on. I mean, I stayed up late at night watching some of this on TV because it was on everywhere.
Yeah, it was everywhere.
Every night. Minneapolis, Chicago. I don't know if you've seen Chicago. Chicago, they went crazy. Chicago, all these cities. And people say, and I'm gonna get your take on this, but people always say, well, why you gotta get out? When you gotta get out there and it's and get violent and do all these things and stuff, and it's it's just a few bad apples out there, and I hate that term because it's not a few bad apples. And see, people, this is what people don't understand. They say, people go through this stuff. I'm just visiting back to Chicago, but it's people who live around there in those neighborhoods in different places. They go through this every day. Guys get stopped every day, and so that aggression builds up. And when it's a chance to release it, they gonna do it any type of way they want. Or how they feel. So they think they just acting out, looting, just stealing and turning over police car. But this is the type of things that they have been mistreated so long. This is our chance to,
And I tell people all the time, you may not see it in Junction City, but when you go to places that I've lived in, like Miami, Atlanta, New York, there's quite a bit of homeless people that are already out there. So when you demonstrate downtown and they sleeping in the cuts and the crevices, this is their opportunity to kick in the door. Okay. You see what I'm saying? There's a certain portion of people that are already out there every night. Like in Atlanta, for instance. I think they said there's at least 1 million people homeless in Atlanta. That's 1 million. And mostly our people. So if they're going to burn a CVS down or they're going to loot a Walgreens, we've been held back for 400 years. I'm not even thinking about that CVS.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't want us to do this, you don't want these people that are less fortunate to do it, well, give us reparations. Give us what we rightfully deserve. We built the country, under the Moroccan Treaty, which is the longest running treaty in America, and it's a treaty with the Moors. Okay. We, from Liberia, Africa. We have the longest running treaty with America, and we're the last to receive any type of assistance. I seen that in Hurricane Andrew in 90, I believe, 4. Okay. When the hurricane hit and the aftermath of them assessing the damage and things like that, man, they waited to feed the black community. I seen Alcee Hastings, if you ever heard of that name. He was, I believe, a senator at the time of Miami, but he was a senator of the black community, Carroll City, Opelika, neighborhoods like that. Well, he got in a helicopter to go and take food down to Perrine and Goulds, which are little suburbs within Miami, predominantly black, because the black people were hungry. There was no electricity for 2 months, and they ripped the top off.
2 months.
2 months. There was so
and that's
many.
What's the name of the city? That's in Miami, right? I'm trying to think of the city that they had.
Goulds, Perrine, Richmond Heights.
Again, with Homestead.
Homestead
That's
is the
it.
last city past the cities
Before
that
you, I went through there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the first thing that came to my mind when I was going to Key West, and before we we on the travel bus and stopped there and home. I said, I've heard this name before, in that area.
Mm-hmm. That was an Air Force base, and during Hurricane Andrew, that whole thing got wiped out.
Right.
But what I saw them do in the helicopter with Alcee Hastings, they directed him to take the food to a different neighborhood, Cutler Ridge, and these uppity Jewish neighborhoods where it wasn't as many black people, because the black people got to the point they had to break in the mall to get something to eat.
Wow.
There was no power, there was no running water, there was nothing, no medical help. There was one gas station for 2 million people. The line was all the way to Key West from Miami, and Key West is an hour and a half away. So, if you've been to Key West, that's not actually in Miami.
Yeah, that's out there, bro.
That's out there. You got families of mosquitoes before you leave. I know because I broke a back windshield and the mosquitoes came right in my car. But it's unfortunate that the people with the longest running treaty in America are being the most mistreated. How about this guy in Michigan last week that got shot in the head by the police officer on his back, La Jolla or something like that?
I didn't hear about that.
You didn't hear about it? Well, the police were wrestling this guy down. Obviously, when somebody's on your back, you're going to try to get up.
Right.
The guy tried to get up on his knees and he wasn't fighting the cop. He was facing the ground. The cop pulled his gun out and shot him in the back of the head and killed him. So it hadn't slowed down. It speeded up. And, when the police chief asked me, well, what are your intentions when you get out there? I was like, to let the community speak. Okay. I'm setting up a stage for them to speak. Because how I got involved is because you and I both know we've been out there protesting since 2012. Trayvon Martin, Michael from St. Louis, the guy who got killed at the convenience store, and the numerous other deaths by police. It's not like the police are really, I don't know, because I'm not a federal investigator, but it seems like they're not investigating their own quick enough.
Okay, that's true.
Now, if it was a black man on the loose, like the one Malvo in New York, or in D.C. who was shooting up federal offices, they've had to find him overnight, like the subway shooter the other day.
Just said, they said we shut him down, we narrowed him in. They gave all the credit to the police, but actually the brother turned himself in.
Yeah, he did.
He walking around. He walking around there in clear daylight.
I had a friend in Florida who used to cut his hair in prison. So and I know some things handled. He was one of the security for the Nation of Islam. Okay. And they were after him. He wasn't after them. Yeah. You see, and that's just my take on it. Okay. For historical purposes, this is being recorded. Right. I know somebody that knew that gentleman in D.C. that was shooting federal officers, and he was head security for Farrakhan. Oh, wow. And that story untold. Yeah. Some of those stories from the old winos on the corner and the brothers laid up in jail on false charges. Yeah. They have big visions and they got big dreams, and we're not going to necessarily hear those stories. Right. So I want to speak for the voiceless. The ones that can't get off the dope. The ones that grew up on welfare and don't see any no hope. I want to be like Jesus, and I'll never be. But in my mind, I want to serve the people like that. So when I told the chief of police, when we get up there, I set this stage up. Well, not me, but the crew. Michelle, Greg, and Michelle Brown. She's probably kind of a silent voice, but I know who I'm talking about. I know you're talking about. Lovely Michelle Brown. Yeah. I love that lady. She's cool. And Greg, they called me.
If I'm not mistaken, Michelle has been taking in foster kids, right? Is that?
I believe so.
I think so. Yeah.
She's good people. She called me. She said, "Michael, we need to do something." She said, "I'll be out there at 6th Street Park," and that's how it happened.
Is that right?
There was no committee.
It was. Yeah, I know it was nothing. It seemed like it was mostly. It seemed like it was mostly word of mouth. I probably found out through Kim. or you know, and the word start going around. I start passing it around to everybody, telling people about it. My wife and I, you know, we say we're going to be down there. I mean, we went to the one in Manhattan. It was held at the little. Well, they did a few different things in Manhattan.
Yeah, they did.
Manhattan is different than Junction City. You know, they kind of limit them on what they can do.
Oh,
where
really?
they can walk, where they can go, you know.
Like when
don't
they
go in
walk
Aggieville.
around
Don't
the
go.
park?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
I
stay in
didn't
this
know
park,
that. I didn't
but
know
don't go in Aggieville. Don't go. You can have this little. They got a little bitty, like a pyramid shaped little park before you get to Aggieville. You know how you got to cut through there. That's far as they can go. The second time they wanted to go, in case they said no.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, they can say no, but you know when you get 1,500 people, the police serve them. Then you know what I'm saying. So.
Yeah.
That's what I told
You
John.
gotta know.
That's what I told John Lamb. I said these people want to get in the street. He was like, "Well, let me block off traffic," because he knew the rules. If we get 1,500 people there, we can march in. That's our street.
Is that right?
Yeah, we can shut down traffic. That's why you see in the city they just in the middle of the street when they get so many people. Yeah, and that's pretty much. There's laws to it, but we got around the law and marched against the sheriff's station. We left the first protest on May 30th. And we
I missed that.
Before they can even give us an option or say, no, we can't do it. We just did it.
Okay.
You know, and they can make the rules later, you know. But we marched at the sheriff department. We sang hymns and we also chanted not any cuss words, you know, some hell no, we won't go. We want some justice. That was kind of the situation. The sheriff's department, that's when the police called me for the protest that we did last year, the big one we're talking about, on I believe it was July 6th or something like that, somewhere around there. That's when the police called me because we had marched on the sheriff department, and that was due to the fact that there was a dirty cop in there. We didn't mention the deputy's name, but he had roughed up some people in a traffic stop.
Okay.
So Felix Moray had made me aware of it. So I said, we're not going to go over there and chant this cop's name. We're not going to give him that credit. We're just going to let the whole entire building know we're here. So we marched around the sheriff department. Detective Captain Nichols picked me up and he said, do you mind if I drop you off back at where you guys were protesting on 6th and Washington? I said, no, because the relationship we want is with the police.
That's good.
We want them to work with us and we work with them. Not always be hunted down, not always be followed, because that can easily reverse in the middle of the night. Nat Turner proved that. And we can't be afraid. 2023. We have to march into the storm.
Right.
And that's just my take.
And see, that's where I know we got a young generation here, but as I say, in Chicago, we used to I've seen police officers pull over drug dealers, take their drugs, take their money, and give them so much to do that. You know, they regular, you know, like they pull over, they give them what they, you know, for you to be able to sell dope around here,
you gotta give me something.
You gotta give me something, you know.
In Miami, they call it Jump Out Tuesday and Thursday.
Oh, is that what
they jump out on you? Plain clothes.
You know, and so that was the only relationship that people had with police. I grew up that I didn't have a real relationship with any of the police. You know, I seen some of them that walk, you know, around our neighborhood, but you didn't have many black cops. You know, you put them, you know, they would put them in the school to work. You know, we had black police officers in the school. Resource officers working in the school, but they wasn't really on the streets or anything.
Well, obviously a black-built city like Chicago is, you know, they're going to paint us a different, they're going to paint the picture a different way. Nobody wants to see us come up.
Right.
I mean, it's not only some bad, fair-skinned people out there that don't want to see us come up. It's also a lot of Orientals and Arabians and all kind of other people. They don't want to see the black man rise up. We've seen that with Malcolm, Meredith. We've seen this on every level.
Right.
And I'm not shocked at what the police doing. I'm just shocked that no other good cop is standing up.
You said something, you know, because they say, why would you guys burn down businesses in your own neighborhood? I grew up working for the Indians and the Arabs in the grocery store. You know, you go to the store, any store there is owned either by the Asians, you know, by the Koreans or the, you know, the Chinese and stuff like that. And so they, like, they don't really have. They're gonna have 1 or 2 black people working in there.
Yeah.
You know, they watching the eyes and ears and be able to communicate. But they wonder why people were burning down stuff in their own neighborhood. But it was, like I said, it goes back to like the treatment from the police, the treatment from these people. I've worked with these people, and sometimes the treatment is not good. You know, when you work with them. You know, when you work in the store.
Liberty City, 62nd Avenue and I-95. That's where you get into your Martin Luther King Street. We know there's always they set it up so it's some violence in there. The police, when they over patrol and militarize the police, when things pop off like riots in Miami, they block off every exit so black people can't leave.
Stay in there.
They can't get out.
Well, what did they do in Chicago when they started down there? They let up the bridges.
Yeah, and
so you're not coming over on this side.
So
we're gonna
how you gonna let your anger out?
Yeah, we're gonna keep. That's why they didn't care out south on the south side that the police went out there when they were looting Foot Locker, burning down Dollar General, and Dollar Trees, and looting Walmart, neighborhood Walmart. They cleaned that place out. Yeah. The police wasn't there.
Is that store worth more than George Floyd's life?
And so they keep them downtown. Now we're gonna keep them away from Saks Fifth Avenue.
There you go.
Macy's and all these places.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
they just keep us contained.
Yeah. Yes,
and there's no way to let their anger out. I mean, if you kill a human being, it's immeasurable.
The containment. Just think about.
Yeah.
Stateway Gardens, Robert Taylor Homes, Cabrini Green in Chicago. All those projects were built for that very reason. To keep them in there, and they're not going to go.
I've even been told Cabrini Green was built for 4,000, and
you have about
Section 8 got 10,000 in
there.
Now,
and you got the people who not the boyfriends and the other kids, the nieces and the cousins that's living in there with them too.
Yeah.
You know, so they all.
Didn't they shut that down already?
Yeah, they most of Cabrini Green, I think, is on Robert Taylor Home. They tore all the projects down, and now they attributed that to all the violence out in the suburbs and different places where they say, they opened up Section 8.
Well, I heard that they built all them townhomes.
Like they sure did.
And Lakeshore Drive and pushed all the Negroes.
Yeah. So and now they live down there.
Ain't that something?
Yeah. Now, when I was in Miami, I always heard, I didn't go, but we wanted to. I always heard about Liberty City and different places. We wanted to see, because it's on First 48, pork and bean projects and stuff. We said, no, we can go.
Man, I went down there in 2020, and I was blessed, because again, I walk by faith. I was just watching Eli with Denzel Washington. He was talking about, I don't have to know where I go. I'm walking by faith, and I'm going west.
You was Denzel.
I had nothing but a backpack and a pair of shades.
Okay. All right.
I got down there, and I cried because when my mother took me to Miami in 1987, she was married at the time, and she introduced me. Her husband was from Miami. And he lived 2 blocks away from Pork and Beans, where Trick Daddy, Trina, and all that. You know? So when I got down there, and I learned my boundaries and where I belong and what I was into and what I wasn't into, I began gospel, like I told you with Richard Cook. But when I discovered exactly the historical places that I was. Okay, fast forward to 2020. Man, if you go to Miami now, you go to Liberty City, it looks like Vietnam. It looks like, and they call it Little Vietnam in some areas. There's nothing to brag about. Like I said, it brought me to tears when I went to my stepfather's family home, and it was abandoned. No stores were open. There was the barber.
Boarded up.
Yeah, boarded up. The barber was asleep in his chair, no business, when it used to be a heavily flourishing barbershop.
Okay.
Radio outside, all the people. And it just broke my heart. Yeah. You know, so I had to stay downtown Miami because there was obviously nowhere that I wanted to stay within where my people were at. Because it was so devastating.
When we used to live on 58th Street in Chicago, 58th, Michigan. And 58th Street, back then, when I was little, it's kind of like you talk about everything. Black business. You had grocery stores, you had barbecue restaurants. I think the name was Helen's. You had the Miss Clyde's. You know, I can name some of these places. You know, you had Romper's Room, which is Chinese place, and they had bars and all down this street. And years ago, I went back home and we went to drive around 58th Street. It's just like you're saying. Mostly all the buildings are gone. When they burn down and get or something happen, they don't rebuild in those areas. You know, the train, you know, the elevator, you know, we get subways and the L train. The train station is gone. It don't even stop there anymore.
The train station.
The train station gone. And so I went back there and I was kind of like, it's all gone. Man, you know, all these things. Man. Yeah, it does. You know, that you remember, that I remember as a kid, that, hey, this is where your mother can give you 50 cents or a quarter and say, go up to the store and get me this. Yeah. And the people knew you. Yeah. And that's one of the things I talked about in our podcast today, how this generation, if we kind of fast forward a little bit, this generation, when I grew up, I knew my neighbors. My neighbors knew me. Right. Yeah. I know your sister had told me about your grandmother. Please come back and join us next week for part 2 of my interview with Mike Turner, a Junction City legend, as he talks about his experience in the music industry and radio all over the United States. So please tune in next week for part 2 as we talk about March or Die.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Experience, Strength, and Hope. Come back and continue to listen on any of our other platforms such as YouTube, Spotify, Anchor.fm, and Apple Podcasts. We encourage you to not only listen, but also reach out and share your stories of experience, strength, and hope at bigdog0862@gmail.com or 785-307-4662. I'm Anthony Timms, and this has been another podcast of Experience, Strength, and Hope from Tony DeMayer Timms. Be blessed, be strong, and most of all, be real.